Good afternoon. Just wait for everyone to settle. So welcome to this session. It's DOT 303 using Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2 Report Builder 3.0. If that's the session you expect, then welcome. If not, this is your opportunity to change your mind. So the first thing I'd like to get out the way is how to pronounce my surname. So for those of you who haven't gathered yet, obviously I'm from South Africa, and my surname has Dutch origins, and if you imagine an imaginary space between the F and the A, you'll see that my surname is pronounced Wolf and then Art. No other derivatives will be permitted. So welcome, and thank you for taking the time out to listen to this presentation. Just make sure that everything's functioning as published. If I can't make the slides work, that's probably not a good sign. Wrong pointing device. So just at a very high level, what we're going to cover this afternoon in the next hour is first to get across the key message for the purpose and application of Report Builder 3.0. We'll have a look at the history of Report Builder. And before we go into that, I just want to get a sense of the audience. How many of you have had experience with Report Builder 1, which was in 2005? Yeah. And in 2008, Report Builder 2? Yeah. Is that in-depth experience? Lots of rollout? Yeah. And from the perspective of self-service, who's focusing on this in their organization, giving data and report building capability back to the business? Is this a big thing? For those of you who are involved in that and who've tried, how would you rate, on average, the success level? So 10 being excellent and 5. So let's get some 10s. Yeah. So sometimes a struggle. 5, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yep. Okay. So what we're going to have a look at today is this marriage of what the business needs and likes to see. So it's a little bit more than just elementary drag and drop, and also enough functionality for IT to really give the business what they want from a self-service perspective. So we'll have a look at some of that. We'll go into a demonstration. I plan to show you some of the easier functionality, some of the stuff that you would be familiar with if you'd seen Report Builder 1 and 2. So I'll just ask for your patience as we go through that. And then have a look at some of the new toys that have been introduced in 3.0. And then there'll be opportunity for some question and answer. So why am I presenting to you today? Who am I? Why does it matter? I'm a business consultant, a business intelligence consultant. I work for the team in Auckland for Datacom. I have a business background, so I have a fair understanding of what it is that business is after, and to basically enable that, I also have a technology background. So I like bringing this blend to consultancy. And I'm also fairly passionate about visualization, because if we can get the information presented in a way that we typically understand things, I think it can be a lot easier for all concerned. So what is the key message? Report Builder 3.0 essentially focuses on reusability, and this is very important. I'll show you how we do that with the introduction of report parts. Improved visualization, so we'll see some of that. And again, as I mentioned earlier, quite a strong focus on self-service reporting. So let's have a brief look at the history. So we started off in Reporting Services 2005. Report Builder 1.0 was released at that time. And let's be honest, you have to start somewhere with these things. It was fine. It worked. It did require a report model. But some of the cool things that it brought through was infinite click-through. So once you had a matrix up, you could click through and pass parameters through to other queries and to continue visualizing the data. In version 2.0, which came out with Reporting Services 2008, we didn't have the dependency on the report model. We could access additional data sources. The other thing that was introduced at that point was the Office look and feel. So we had a report building tool that felt like Word or felt like Visio or Excel. It had the typical Office ribbon, and it just created a comfortable environment for people to work in. And we also introduced some additional tools at that point, which were gauges, so we could visualize information in a slightly friendlier way. So version 3.0 obviously just builds on that. We're still in that Office look and feel, that Office environment. Expanded the data sources so we can access Azure, the parallel data warehouse. Obviously, there's lots of developments in that space. We can also access SharePoint lists and a number of other databases like Essbase, SAP, VW, and so on. Additional tool set that have been introduced is the maps and indicators and spark lines. So we'll show at least the spark lines. Time permitting, we'll get into some of the indicators as well. And this is, again, toward that improved visualization functionality that we spoke about. Then there's also improved expression capability. One of the things that have been introduced is the ability to do aggregates on aggregates. So if you want to do average sales over a period of months and then compare that to an average over the year, you can do it in a single expression. So again, if we have opportunity, we'll get in and have a look at that. Just some other points to mention before we get started is it's delivered through click once, the technology where users simply click on the link. I'll show you that, and it'll verify that they have the latest version on their desktop and install. As I mentioned, the familiar Office style, and it's targeted at business users, which is obvious. But as I said to you, we'll show you there's quite a nice marriage between what the business user needs and what IT can deliver. So let's go and have a look. Just to explain my environment, first just the apologies for the screen. The resolution requires me to scroll up and down, so that's not by design. I chose to do this presentation in reporting services installed in a SharePoint integrated mode. Now, that's not a prerequisite for the functionality that you're going to see today. I enjoy putting it into SharePoint if it's an option, just because we've got extended configuration options. You can run this in Enterprise, Standard, or Foundation. To orientate you a little bit before we get started, I've simply created some libraries here. Some of them you'll be familiar with. I've got site pages, shared documents, those are standard. But these I've created for the sake of the demonstration. So I've got data sources, a report part library, as well as a report library. One of the changes that you would need to make to a standard SharePoint library, once you've installed reporting services, if you go through to the library settings, we'll have this additional content type. So you would add from content types, and you would now have these content types which you would apply to the SharePoint library. Once you've done that, the user gets this additional functionality of being able to go to the report library, click on Documents, click on New Document, and now they have this function in the menu, which is Report Builder, and that they get as a result of the content type on the library. What you're seeing here in this little interface is the click once process. It verifies whether A, that software has been installed on the machine, and if it has, is it the most current version? And it takes ranging amounts of time to load. So just let's be patient while that fires up. I had actually already loaded it before we started, so it shouldn't take too long. While we wait, are there any questions in the meantime so far? Pretty elementary. Someone should create a data dictionary for the word moment and what it means.
While you're waiting for that,
Yeah.
is there any possibility to run this outside of the application?
You mean just standard ASP page?
Basically, can I embed it in an application?
Yes, you can. You can. So there, I probably wouldn't install reporting services in integrated SharePoint integrated mode. I'll just install it natively, and then either use a reporting web part or reporting control in your application. If you're building ASP type apps, then yeah, absolutely. This is annoying. Let's try it again. Anytime now. Sorry, folks. There's really nothing more to it than that. So it's bundled with reporting services, obviously. So the one click that you see there, or the create new, if you were running just reporting services natively, it would be a link up in the control page, which would just say report builder. It would be an application. That link is controlled in the reporting services configuration. So you can specify the report builder load URL to be anywhere in your network, anywhere that's authenticated or as secure as you want it to be. And that's all controlled through reporting services config. Okay, we're in. Yay. Okay, just a little bit of orientation here. So as I said to you, it brings you the sort of native Windows application look and feel. So we've got all the standard things: new report, new data set, open, recent, and so on. So just two things here is we're going to go into a demonstration showing reports, but you do have the opportunity here to create a specific data set. So remember, one of the key messages is reusability. So a business analyst or a responsible IT person or a business user that has the capability can actually go to any particular data source, create a subset data set query from the data source, and publish it into a SharePoint list or into the directory structure, which then becomes accessible to other people in the business wanting to build reports. So I'm not going to spend time on that, but just so that you're aware of that. So let's go through a simple matrix wizard. So again, if you've seen this before, I ask just for your patience as we go through it. I'm immediately presented with an opportunity here to choose an existing data set. So as I mentioned earlier, this would have been published into either my SharePoint list libraries or into the file system. Or I have the opportunity here to create a data set. So I'm going to create a data set. I'm going to create a really, really elementary report just to show some of the functionality. So here I could choose a data source connection, or I could click on new. If I browse, though, you'll see that I'm presented with, in this instance, my SharePoint libraries. And one of the things that you'll see, if you recall from the front page, I had here a report library and data sources, and I'm going to see that now here. So if I click on data sources, those data sources that have been published for me into my SharePoint library will be available. So for this particular part of the demonstration, I'm just going to use a shared data source. It's simply a connection to a SQL database, so there's no magic going on there. Now, bear in mind that this is designed, its target really is your advanced business user, again, around self-service. So we're immediately presented with this design query interface, and it allows users who have little or no understanding of joins and how to write SQL aggregation, sums, grouping, and it allows them to do that themselves. So again, we're back to self-service. So let me take you through this. So we're going to do a simple matrix that's just going to look at product category, subcategory, and internet sales over time. So let's just build that together. One of the things I'm going to obviously want is date. So I'm going to ask for the fiscal year and the fiscal quarter. I'm going to want my English product name. I'm going to want the product subcategory and also the product category, English. And the information that I'm going to want from that is going to be fact internet sales. This is AdventureWorks database. I'm not sure how they stay in business. I ordered a bicycle about 2 months ago and it still hasn't been delivered. So I'm not sure where they're at. Internet sales amount, there we go. So at this point in time, I've done a very simple SQL select. What you'll see here, I'm not sure if it's rendering well on the screen there, but I have the opportunity right now to do aggregate. So I could say I want to see a sum of this, and it'll immediately do the group by syntax correctly in the SQL script. It also, at this stage, has inferred the relationships based on the constraints. Now, if I wanted to massage those or edit those, I have this relationship builder here. And I can immediately say that my left table is product subcategory, my right table is dim product category, and the inner join, the type is inner join left, right, full outer, and so on. So I can go ahead and edit the relationships. The one that's going to be of concern to us right now, obviously, is going to be this one here, because I've brought through dim date, but it's used in 3 places in the table. So if I click the auto detect, I can immediately go and edit this relationship, and you'll see there's all 3 fields. Now if I run the query now, I won't return any result sets, because there's no ways that there's a record that has the same order date, due date, and ship date. It's highly unlikely, and we could test that, but take my word for it. So let's get rid of this, because we're only going to be interested in order date. If I delete that, now I have my select. I've defined my relationships, and I can immediately run the query, and I'll get some kind of result set. So immediately the user's feeling quite confident. So, well, they're exploring the data themselves. But now, for those of you with large databases, which I'm sure many of you, you can imagine that bringing back a result set like this could be quite daunting if the user wasn't aware of what they were doing. So the first thing, of course, we could do is we could control either the data source or the data set that the user is using, and they also obviously have this ability to create their own parameter. So we're going to add that parameter, and we're going to say we want specifically to work with fiscal year, and we're going to put in a default value of where it's equal to 2008. And yes, please go ahead in the report and build this as a parameter. So if I choose that, I've done all the thinking work for now, and now I'm going to do some layout. So this is a matrix control. Where do you want things to go, and how do you want them to be ordered? So if I put sales amount there, I'll bring my fiscal year across, and I'll bring in my category and subcategory. Let's get it in the right place. And again, through this wizard, I'm stepping the user through processes that, as a person working in Report Designer, perhaps takes a little bit longer than this. So I have options here now on how I would like to see the layout. I say, well, that's fine. I can choose whichever colors I like. So we'll stay with the defaults. And my report's done. So here I have my report matrix. And I have my data set, I have my data sources, and it's automatically built parameters for me. So in this instance, if I run the report, get this wonderful blank screen. You'll see that the parameters applied, and it has the default year that I've put in there. And I have this, it's there, but it's a little scruffy, right? I'm not quite seeing the information that I would like to see. So now I have the opportunity to go through. Now if I was a user, I might want to just see each one of these in their separate properties. So let's open up one of these. So I've got text box property, and I've got this interface that has all of the elements that I can amend and edit and change. And I can set colors, and I can set number formatting. So for example, if I wanted this box to be a number, I could say it should be a currency, and it should represent that way. So that's again for the user who maybe is not familiar with the development environment. However, it does have a properties panel, which you may be more familiar with if you were using Report Designer. And each one of those properties you can obviously access here on the side. The other thing that we can do immediately is we can go and edit parameter properties. And I would like to just show you this because we're about to move on to the report parts. So I'm going to create another data set here quickly and just call it the year parameter. And I'm going to use a data set embedded in my report. I'm going to use that report and just very simply, where am I? Sorry. I think it's dim date, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So now when I go to my parameter, I can update my parameter properties and say get the values for that parameter from a query. In this instance, I'm just going to use fiscal year and fiscal year. Oh, the other thing that I probably would want to do, depending on what the report was for, I probably wouldn't want to allow multiple values, and that'll just decide whether it's a checkbox in the drop-down or just a standard drop-down. So if I run this report now, you'll see that it's a relatively easy process to build a report. The thinking that's still required, IT can go back and modify the data set, optimize it, perhaps improve the nature of the query. And here I've got my my parameter drop-down, which I created. So let's just recap before we move on. I've been able to create a query relatively easily. I've been able to put it in a matrix control relatively easy. I'm able to format that. Let's get on with the reusability though, because once I have this report, I can use this option here which says publish report parts. When I publish report parts, the first thing it prompts me for is where would I like to put them. So I created, if you recall from one of the first screens, I created a report parts library in SharePoint. So I'm just going to put these report parts here. And what is it actually asking me? It goes through the report and it has a look at a set number of elements that it may find in that report. One of them is a parameter, fiscal year. This one's called Tablex, which is probably not too descriptive. So let's quickly change the name of that. You'll see that this is called Tablex. Let's call it ticket matrix, so we can easily identify it. Once that's done, if I say publish report parts, let's put it into the report part library. And there you can see I have the opportunity now to publish all the elements on my report and put that into a library. So it's parts of a report, but it's not a report on its own. So how would we use this? Well, if we publish that, and it'll give us an indication here. Hopefully it doesn't. Yeah, okay, let's have a look at this. So it's given me an alert, and it's basically what this alert is telling me is that I already have a report part with that name. So I might want to go and change that, but for the sake of this demonstration, I can leave it. But it is accurate. The fiscal year parameter already exists in there. So now I'm a new user in the business, and I want to create a blank report. And I start asking myself, well, what are typically the kinds of presentations of data that I'll use in a report? And the first thing that I can do once I have a blank report now is I have this opportunity to go and insert report parts. And this will, depending on my settings, this will allow me to see the report part gallery that I have access to. I have the ability to search, and I also have the ability to search for a specific type of report part. So I can say, show me all charts, show me gauges, images, maps, rectangles, parameters, and tablets. So just for the sake of this, I'm going to do a search on all because it's not a large list. And what you'll see here is all of my parameters, things I've created in the past, like maps, product sales matrix, and look, here's the tech ed matrix. Now, before I drag it across, I just want to bring your attention to this. You'll see that because this is a blank report, it's got no data sets, it's got no parameters, and it's got no data sources. Okay, nothing up my sleeves. And if I drag the matrix across and place it on the canvas, what it's done as well as bring the matrix and all of the formatting that I have, it's also intelligent enough to say, well, I need that parameter, I need this data source, and I need that data set. So it's incredibly easy for somebody else to take elements that I've invested time and energy in building in a report and put it onto their own report. There's naturally some things you'd want to consider. So if parameters had the same name as you saw, you might want to be careful around those things. So there's some planning required. But as you can see, it's a lot easier. The other thing, just checking on the time. So the other thing is, so let's save this first and say this is our, we'll put it in our report library, and we'll call this TICKED Report 1. No prizes for creativity. All right, and let's go back to a blank report. New blank report. Okay, so I'm going to bring it across now, and now I'm IT or I'm a business analyst, and I decide, well, one of the things I've heard about in Report Builder 3.0 is this concept of a spark line. So let's insert one of those. So insert a column to the right, and I'm going to put that spark line here. So I'll go and insert, and I say I want to put a spark line in. And what a spark line essentially allows me to do is to visualize an aggregated amount of data in a very, very small space, in a single cell. Spark lines are available in Excel. And essentially what it does, again, one of the key messages we wanted you to take away was visualization. It allows the business user to see anomalies very, very easily. So let's build one of these. There it is. And I decide what my data values are going to be. So for this particular spark line, I'm just going to add sales amount. And I want to see that over, let's say, over the fiscal quarter. And when I run that report now, we should see the spark line show up. Okay, so it probably won't look great right now. Yeah, it renders all right. You just have to be aware when you're formatting these reports that this does actually render in HTML. And so you need to just be sensitive to your line height, because this will stretch and sometimes just won't look pretty. But if you give it the right attention, it's great. So if you have a look at these two bits of data, so I'm looking at bike racks and bike stands, you can see how easy it is for the business user to have a very quick comparative view of this information. So we're looking at sales over the fiscal quarters, and you can see that these will match those. So instead of having to look through the numbers, I can get a quick visualization. So as this new business analyst, I'm mighty proud of myself, and I decide, well, I'm going to publish this as a report part. Let's just go back to the design screen. Publish the report part, and I'm going to keep the same name. Let's put that there. I'm going to review and modify. You'll see it's still called the TechEd matrix. I'm going to get the same warning around fiscal year, but don't worry. So, happy with myself, and off I go home, feeling quite productive. Next day, business arrives and opens up a report that they had created some weeks ago. And the first thing we'll be notified about is that this report part that we're using has been updated. And I have the option now to go and either retrieve that new updated report part, or I can ignore it and say, no, well, the version that I have is actually the version I want. If I click on this to view the updates, it'll tell me exactly, because I could have multiple report parts in a single report. And I'll say, well, all right, let's update that. And suddenly all the changes that have been made now appear on this report. So again, the emphasis there is on reusability. Yep. So we've seen reusability, and we've seen some of the visualization. How many of you have heard that Report Builder 3.0 reports mapping? Yes? Should we see that? Because that's quite a lot of fun. Any questions so far? Yeah? Pretty straightforward. Yeah?
Can you version your report so that you can keep track of the changes?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to check. Versioning is somewhat of a constraint in general, because what Report Builder can do is it can go and open up reports that have already been published to my library or directory, provided I have access to it, and I can update those. But as you'll see, there's very little. There's no presence at the moment of source safe or TFS or anything like that. So versioning can be a challenge. It's definitely something you want to pay attention to. I don't have a direct answer for you though. Yeah. Custom styles? You mean as in the layout and the reports? Yeah. So styling is one of those challenges because it's not actually an entity on its own. So if you're talking about margins and columns and so on, again, still at the moment the way to address that would probably be to have a template report and open that template report and then start working from there. What you can put into report parts, though, is images. So you could have a customized or a standard company logo that, when it gets dragged onto a report, it's in the format and the sizing that it should be. Yeah. Okay. Does that answer your question? Almost. Good. All right. Let's get on to mapping. We're also going to use analysis services to do the mapping example. So. We don't need to save that. All right, let's go through the map wizard. So essentially, what we've done or what's been done in Report Builder 3.0 is support for an ESRI or a shapefile. So if you hop onto, I've got the link later on in my slides before you go, you'll be able to get some free Esri files or shape files. You can download them from Stats, and there is some supporting data. But just for the purposes of ease of demonstrating, we'll stay with what's bundled. But these are readily available, and there are some free versions. I've been able to successfully download New Zealand maps as easily as any of the others. It just, again, depends on what is the categorization that you want. So some areas are broken down into regional political wards, or they could be geographic areas, and so on. So it's really up to you. And we have support at this stage for map galleries, the Esri shapefiles, and also SQL spatial queries.
What does the ESRI stand for?
ESRI, it's actually the name of the company that started putting together GIS maps. I'm not sure who I'm talking to. Who asked the question? Yeah, so it's actually the name of that company, which just escaped me right now. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So let's have a look. We're going to do a USA by state. So yeah, it's not rendering great, but we should be able to. Can everyone see kind of what I've got in front of me? Yeah. Okay. So at this point, I've got a choice to move the maps around, and I have the opportunity here to crop the map. So it's going to eliminate any of the unnecessary presentations. And I also can add Bing map layers if you need to have the geographic presentation. And once you choose Bing, you can choose whether you want to see roads and so on. So whatever is appropriate for your organization. I have these three options of how I'd like to surface data onto the map. For this presentation, I'm going to use a bubble map. Essentially what the bubble map does is it'll take some of my data, it'll aggregate it, and it'll present it on the geographic states. So the states that we would see in the United States. So again, I have the same option. I can say choose an existing data set, or I can create a data set. I'm going to create one. Now, I don't want to use my SQL data source. I actually want to use my analysis services data source. So I've created that there, SSAS data source. Again, no magic here, just a simple data connect. And let's go across. My query designer will now obviously be quite different to the standard SQL query designer. I'll be presented with what you may have seen in BIDS, and if you work with analysis services, this certainly won't be a new interface for you. And for most business users, it's fairly easy to navigate. So what we're going to do here is, again, we're going to look at internet sales. I'll pop that in there. And I want to use geography, but if you go into the data warehouse, the AdventureWorks data warehouse, you'll see there's no direct correlation between geography and internet sales. So the relationship there is between customer. So if you were to do a SQL query, you would first have to go and get customer, and then from customer you would be able to derive the geography. In the cube, it's already been done for us. So if we go to customer, we'll see that they've created this relationship called customer geography. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, just to reduce the data set that's going to come down, I'm going to first, because I have a map of the United States, I'm going to first filter my data set according to that. So I'll bring back only internet sales as they pertain to the United States. Then I'm going to also want to bring back country and state province. This is all I'm interested in right now. So what I have here is just a very, very simple MDX query. When I flip over to the next page on the wizard, I'm looking at two components. This is the spatial data. So in that Esri file or the shape file, I have these three fields that I can map to or match in my own data set. Down here, I have my data set. So I've got country, state, province, and then the internet sales amount is what I'm going to want to visualize. So the first thing I can do is I'll just map state name. Ideally, if you want a high level of fidelity, you would want to map the actual state identifier as well as the state key that is delivered through the shapefile. But this works pretty well. So we'll just stay with the state name, and I'm going to choose state province from my data set. So essentially what I'm saying here is that this data matches that data in the map. Once I've done that selection, the next question that I'm posed with is, well, what is it that I would actually like to bring out onto the map? And I was going to say, well, I want to see the sum of internet sales by state. And so I choose my data field accordingly. And when I finish, hey presto, I have a map with my information. If I run this, very simple, you'll simply see a map. Let's see if we can zoom in. Is it clear enough? Let's see if we can get a little bit better than that. There we go. What you're seeing there are the bubbles, and it's showing you that up in this state here, and this state here, and that state there, those are the higher sales that we had over time. So the immediate thing that's obvious is that it's not very rich. Right? I want to give my user more and more information. So the first thing I want to do is I want to say, well, when the user hovers over that, they should be able to see some basic information. So any of you who've worked with Performance Point knows that a lot of that information is inherent and implicit. But here we have to take a little bit of time out and do some work. So there's my map. And just as I showed you earlier, I also have properties as they pertain to elements within the map. So I have this polygon layer here, and this is what gets surfaced for me to control. So I'll take you to the most important part right now, is I go to the polygon template, and I've got this function here, which is the tooltip. And I have the full expression ability of reporting services in which to say, when you hover over that particular part, this is what I'd like you to see. So I think it would be important for us to see the state, and probably want to see a definition of the number. So let's call it total sales. Yep. And, well, let's put in the total sales amount. And we could do all sorts of formatting, currency formatting in it. But let's get to the point. All right. So once I've done the tooltip, now, as a user, if I hover over this, I can see that it's Washington, and the total sales was that. And if I hover over here, I can see that that's California, and its total sales were according to that. So, yeah, it's all right. It's a little bit better. But as a user, I probably want to drill down, right? I probably want to see what's going on behind the scenes once I've identified that the sales in Washington are high. One of the other things you may notice right now is that I can't filter this by date. That needs to change. So what we have here again, is a data set, and you'll see that there's no parameters here. So if I go into my data set, I can modify my query, and if I'm versed in MDX, I can just use simple MDX and create that. Did he say simple and MDX in the same sentence? Cool. All right, so we want to filter by date. Specifically, we want to filter by fiscal year. So let's have a look at that. Let's put the fiscal year there because it's going to be a filter. And we have very much, as we saw, very much the same as we saw earlier, we have the ability to turn this into parameter. Let's first choose our default value. We're going to say 2009. No, we did 2008 previously. Let's stay with that. And I'm going to say, yes, please make this a parameter. When we come back, you'll see that we now have our date fiscal year parameter. And we don't have a data set here. Not to worry, show hidden data sets. Here's the data set that creates the query that populates that parameter. Now, in order to facilitate the demonstration, I had to do a little bit of a fudge, so I'm just going to take you through that, and I'll show you how we work with that. Because we want to pass through the year parameter through to another report, which does a relational query. And as you may be aware, MDX structures the result set slightly differently. So I can't just simply get a year. I'll get my hierarchy with the year value. So let me just show you what we do there quite quickly. Let's go into the query. So you may be familiar with this. I'll just tidy this up a little quickly so I can see where I am. Member, select. Yep, that's fine. So if I run this query, you'll see what MDX does. It brings back a parameter value like that. I actually just need something a little simpler. So we will put that in there, and I will just ask for member value, which is the actual value you may find in the table, and I'm going to say parameter year value. What's going on? My typing. That should work. Yep. And then I need to just bring that into the select. Okay. And we will put that down here. Let's just get it right. Yep, we should be fine. Run that query. Where have I got a comma that I don't need one? Where's that? Big button? Ah, thank you. Member. There you go. So I just really want to use this value here. All right, so let's first go and change the parameter. I don't want multiple values. And here I'm going to say get from the query, but the value that I want is going to be, let's use the label, parameter year value. And now you can see that it's bringing back in this parameter, it's bringing back the years as I've requested. So if I choose 2009, I'm now looking at sales. You can see that it alters quite dramatically. 2009, 2008. So as I said to you, what we're after here is the ability to drill down. So we want to allow the user to go from an analysis services query into a relational query, where perhaps they want to draw out lists of information based on what they've seen and visualized here. So how do we do that? It's really very simple. We click on that. We go to our polygon template, and what you'll see here is that we have an action. Now this action could be any number of things. I'm going to show you the go to report action, but it could be go to a bookmark in the same report, go to a URL, and we could construct that URL based on the values that are underlying the element that we're clicking on. And there's various other things we could do. We could make things switch on and off on the report depending on what we're trying to achieve. But for us, we just want to go to a report. So I have prepared a report in preparation for this. So I'll just call that one up. It's very similar to the one that we built earlier on. cunningly called map drill through report. Okay, now when we go to that report, we're going to want to hand over some information so that that query comes out right for us. So the first thing that we're going to want to hand over is the fiscal year. I'm going to say, well, pass that query, and I can build a whole subset of queries and expressions, but what I'm going to ask for here is one of my parameters, and I'm going to say hand over the date fiscal year, but I don't want to hand over the value, and this was a little bit of a fudge. I'm actually going to just hand over the label because the value is that complex MDX presentation. So I'm going to say send the label, and you saw that in the parameter we chose the label to be the actual value of the year, 2008. And I don't only want that particular fiscal year, I also want you please to send across the state province name that I've chosen from the report. So this is a field selection now. State province. Yep. So that's an expression. Good. Now how does it know what to send across? Well, each one of these elements has its data. You'll recall this from our query builder. There's a state FB, SPS state name, and we were explicit in creating the relationship between that and our data set. So it knows underneath this little element exactly what it is that we want to pass across. So if I run that report now, lovely. Let's see, what have I typed wrong? It's not even my typing, right? Map 1 can return error in function. Just make sure I got the content right. It's not the tooltip. It'll be in my action. I could have this the wrong way around. Province state name. We can always go and check. Still not. Just stand by. I'll just save this one here. Let's go and open up. Oh, still, that's fine. Is it saved? Not saved. Map ticket report 1. Failed to save. Okay, let's just get rid of that quickly. Sorry about that. It's probably fiscal year. Just see if we can do this. Yeah, might work. Yeah, I've got the state province name wrong. Just give me a second and I'll save this. It will save this time. T-rep1. You can see it's getting shorter and shorter. So let's open that report quickly. Map drill through report. I just want to see what parameter name I've got there. State province name. That's right. Did I? Okay. Let me go and fix that. Okay, so we know this report does work. Let's open this one. What did you say I had wrong there? Province state name. Okay, let's go back there. So it should be state, province, stay with me, name. That looks good. Fields, yep, that's right. Ah, okay, I know what I did. All right, sorry about that. So if we run this report now, so we're visualizing this information. So again, we've got the hover over for the business. They can immediately see, and somebody is now wanting to interrogate this information. And if they click through on that, it'll immediately open up the other report, and it'll pass those parameters across successfully, finally, fiscal year and province name. And now I have the ability to be looking at relational data now, not analysis services data. So again, this is a good interaction between looking at OLAP information versus perhaps list-based reporting. Yeah. Any questions on that? Apart from my typing skills. I'll be with you now, sorry. Yeah?
There is some overlap between the performance points server and this presentation that you just did. So how do you decide whether you use reporting services or performance points server?
It's probably going to be a cost decision, because if you want performance point, you're going to need SharePoint Enterprise. Whereas if you have this, you can have reporting services. It's bundled with SQL. There's no extra cost. You don't need SharePoint to do the things that you've seen today. You can actually deploy this into the file system, and you can run it natively on reporting services. So it could be a cost decision. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Good? Yeah. Ah, okay. Yeah. Yes?
Now, when you were designing the report, you started with a set of data which has some geographical information.
Yes.
Now, say if you want to do that for your customers and you want to get a catchment area in Auckland, for example.
Yes.
Can you do the similar thing with Bing Maps for New Zealand, or is that metadata not really?
No, you can, absolutely. So first of all, to answer your question is, where does the metadata come from? So when let's go and create just a new blank report, and let's just step through that again. So if we did a map wizard, this information here is bundled. It's a map gallery. It's essentially a built-in ESRI file, an Esri file. But the metadata lives in that shape file. It's the .shp file, and it has all of the metadata, the classifications, and so on of that map. It has those 3 core data fields which you can reference, and that's basically your link into the data. To answer your question, if you wanted to build a specific New Zealand report for a specific area, let's say you wanted to do income by individuals in the Auckland area, you would go and get a map that supports that area that you're interested in. Then you would go and match that with your data query in either your relational store or your analysis store, your OLAP store, and you would map those together. So it's a bit of legwork between both of those things. Did I answer your question?
Kind of, yeah, but that map data doesn't really come with the reporting service, does it?
No, you have to go and get the map data, yeah.
Bing doesn't provide that either, does it?
So Bing's is just an overlay.
Right.
So Bing's going to give you, it's going to give you what the ground looks like, where there's water, where there's roads, where there's post offices. That's additional metadata. But the actual ESRI or shapefile, you're probably going to want to spend a little bit of money getting one for yourself. Yeah. Okay. But having said that, there are free versions. As I said, you can go to stats. They've got. Yep. Okay. We've got 5 minutes. Are there any more questions? Just one last thing that I'd like to show you, which came across in this report, just so that you've got a sense of that, because we do have the time. Is in this report. There's another pretty cool function. If I show you California, what's the most common thing that the business does when they've got a report? Export to Excel, right? So, because they want to work with the data. So that's fine. I'm going to show you that functionality. So what we have here is indicators. And I just want to take you in and just show you some of the functionality that lives behind an indicator. So again, an indicator is the ability to create KPIs and to track KPIs in your organization against a certain data set or movements of data. So if I show you this indicator property here, you'll see that we've just put it in just to show you the sum of the sales amount as a percentage of total sales. And I'll take you through and I'll show you what it looks like now. But what's important here is that you can define exactly how you want the element to present. So first you can choose a different type, a gauge type. I've just chosen the simple red, yellow, and green. But you can set your colors and so on based on certain parameters. But I think what's most important to see here is that nothing is fixed. Nothing is set, and you don't make any decisions that are hard-coded. So each one of these, the color, the icon, the parameters that are being measured are all have the ability to be built in with the expression builder. So you can really make the experience quite rich for the users. Then just one last thing before you go. As I said, one of the most common things that business does with their reports is to export to Excel. And one of the niceties, I suppose, of this new matrix control and also in Report Builder 3 is the ability to set, let me get there. Here we go. You've got the ability to control your page break. And in this particular control, you can set the page name. And let me just show you what I've done in the expression. I've said this is the sales for the state province name. Now, when I render this report, let's go, what was it? Washington had some sales. If I view report. So let me first show you the indicators. You can see here that as a percentage of total sales, these products are lagging. This one's doing all right, and that's based on those parameters. And again, as I said, one of the most common things the user does now is to say export this to Excel. And let's just call it that. And if we go to the desktop, there it is there. And this is just a nice to have. When I open up Excel, you'll see that I now have the ability to name the tabs in my Excel export. So that was built from the expressions and the content that was on the report. So that's quite useful for users now. They can just simply export whatever matrix they're looking at and then go back in Excel and know exactly what it is that they were referencing. There are obviously other ways. I mean, there you can see the value there. Good. Any questions before we close that down? We're almost done. So let's just get back to the slides. Yep. So we did that. These were the sessions, all of the BI sessions at TechEd. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to enjoy some of those. One of the things that I did mention was just some free geospatial data. So if you wanted to hop on, you could go and have a look at diva-gis.org. They've got not only free geospatial data, they also have some other applications if you wanted to explore geospatial. And then obviously in New Zealand, you can go to stats.gov.nz to get some statistics, so you can go and see census information and so on. Good. And I think that's us. We're pretty much wrapped. Any more questions? If not, thank you very much for your patience and time.